This is the moment the West officially died. If you've been following the news for the last 5 days, you thought you had seen it all. You saw the President of the United States humiliated at Davos when the European delegation walked out. You saw the Japanese bond market collapse, erasing trillions in wealth. You saw the White House construction halted by a judge, leaving a mud pit on the North Lawn. And yesterday, you saw 200,000 people surround the executive mansion chanting, "Make America Go Away." You thought it couldn't get worse. You were wrong. At 3:14 a.m. this morning, Wednesday, January 28, 2026, President Donald Trump didn't just cross a red line, he incinerated it. In a late-night rage-fueled post on Truth Social, a post that historians will likely study as the suicide note of a superpower, the president lashed out at the European leaders who embarrassed him in Switzerland. He didn't just insult them. He didn't just call them names. He claimed ownership over them. In a rambling, all-caps manifesto, the President of the United States declared that the secret deal for Greenland was not only real, but that European security was a protection racket that he personally owned. He referred to the leaders of Germany, France, and Denmark as, and I quote, "vassals who begged on their knees for my protection." The reaction was instant. It was nuclear, and it was unprecedented. For the first time since 1945, the leaders of the free world have issued a joint coordinated condemnation of the American president. It wasn't a statement of concern. It wasn't a diplomatic disagreement. The official statement signed by the Prime Minister of the UK, the Chancellor of Germany, and the President of France contained 3 words that effectively ended the Atlantic Alliance: appalling and false. But they didn't stop at words. As of 8:01 a.m. this morning, the ambassadors of the G7 nations have been recalled from Washington for consultations. If you know diplomatic language, you know what that means. It means the relationship is broken. It means the United States is no longer the leader of the free world. It is a pariah state. In this deep dive special report, we are going to break down the fatal insult that shattered 80 years of diplomacy in one night. We are going to analyze the terrifying legal and military implications of the European response. And we are going to expose the bunker mentality inside a White House that is now completely isolated from reality, from its allies, and from its own people. The world didn't just turn the page on America today, they closed the book. To understand why the world is furious, we have to look at the text itself. This wasn't a standard Trump tweet. This was something darker. The contact, as we reported yesterday, was the viral success of the Make America Go Away protests. The president was trapped in the residence, watching the crowds, watching the mockery. His ego was under siege. He needed to reassert dominance. He needed to prove that he was still the king. So at 3:14 a.m., he picked up his phone. The post read, "The failed leaders of Europe, weak Mette, sleepy Olaf, and little Emmanuel, think they can walk out on me. They forgot who owns them. I have the receipts. They begged on their knees for my protection. Greenland is mine. The Arctic is mine. They are just vassals living on American charity. If they want to play tough, I will pull the plug on NATO tomorrow and let the wolves eat them. Pay up or shut up." MAGA. Let's break down why this is a fatal insult. One, vassals who begged on their knees. In diplomatic history, you never ever imply that an ally is a servant. You can call them cheap. You can call them annoying. But calling a sovereign head of state a vassal who begged is a declaration of imperial dominance. It strips them of their legitimacy in the eyes of their own voters. It is a word loaded with feudal history, a master-slave dynamic. Pause. By using it, Trump wasn't just insulting them, he was delegitimizing their democracies. 2, Greenland is mine. He didn't say we have a deal, he said mine. This confirms a European fear that Trump views sovereign nations as real estate assets to be acquired. It validates the Greenland crisis narrative that the U.S. is acting as an aggressor. It also creates a massive legal liability, which we will discuss later. 3, I will pull the plug on NATO tomorrow. This is the nuclear threat. Article 5 of NATO is the bedrock of global security. Threatening to let the wolves eat them, a clear reference to Russia, is not a negotiation tactic. It is a mafia shakedown. It tells every capital in Europe that their security is dependent on the mood of one man at 3 a.m. When the sun rose in Brussels and London, the diplomatic cables began to burn. The president likely thought this post would rally his base. He thought it would make him look strong. Instead, it made him look like a madman who had lost touch with the constraints of his office. The reaction from Europe was not the usual chaotic piecemeal criticism. It was a firing squad. At 600 a.m. EST, the foreign ministries of the United Kingdom, France, Germany, Canada, and Japan released a simultaneous joint statement spying surprised. This never happens. Usually, these statements are watered down to preserve future relations. This one was razor sharp. The text, the recent statements by the President of the United States regarding the sovereignty of European nations and the nature of our security alliance are appalling and false. The United States is an ally, not a master. The Atlantic Alliance is a partnership of equals, not a protection racket. We reject the characterization of our nations as vassals, and we categorically deny the fabrications regarding the status of Greenland. We will not be coerced. We will not be blackmailed. The phrase appalling and false is the diplomatic equivalent of a slap in the face. False means the president is a liar. Appalling means the president is morally bankrupt, but the most shocking signature on that document was the United Kingdom. For decades, the special relationship between the US and UK has survived everything through wars, scandals, and crises. London has always stood by Washington. Today, the British Prime Minister stood with Europe against it. He US President. Why? Because Trump insulted the crown by implying that the UK, a monarchy with deep pride, was a vassal. He insulted the king. He insulted the history of the British Empire. The UK realized that under Trump there is no special relationship. There is only submission, and they chose dignity over the dollar. Size. This is the geopolitical equivalent of a divorce. The UK has moved its furniture out of the house. The bridge across the Atlantic has collapsed. It gets worse. We are receiving unconfirmed reports from Brussels that Poland and the Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, are discussing invoking Article 4 of the NATO treaty. Article 4 says that members will consult together when their security is threatened. Usually, it is invoked when Russia does something aggressive. Today, they are discussing invoking it because of the United States. They view Trump's threat to let the wolves eat them as a direct threat to their security. Imagine that. NATO members meeting to discuss how to defend themselves from the instability of the American president. The Secretary General of NATO has reportedly canceled his trip to Washington. He is holding emergency meetings in Brussels. The alliance is fracturing in real time. If the U.S. cannot be trusted to uphold Article 5, then NATO is dead. And if NATO is dead, every country in Europe needs to build their own nuclear weapons. Rushed. We are looking at the start of a global nuclear arms race triggered by one Truth Social post. Germany is already discussing reviving its nuclear energy program with a military dimension. Poland is asking France for nuclear sharing agreements. The nuclear umbrella provided by the U.S. has been folded up by Trump, and now everyone is scrambling for cover. The fatal insult isn't just political, it's financial. Following the statement, the European Union announced a review of strategic economic ties. That is code for targeted sanctions. We already have the Canada blockade strangling the Midwest. Now Europe is threatening to target the U.S. tech sector. The EU Commissioner for Trade hinted that if the U.S. persists with its hostile rhetoric, the EU could invoke its new anti-coercion instrument, ACI. This is a legal tool Brussels created specifically to fight economic bullying. They could impose data privacy fines, digital service taxes, and luxury goods tariffs that would Silicon Valley and Wall Street. The markets know this. The Nasdaq is down another 3% this morning. Apple, Google, Microsoft, companies that rely on European revenue are bleeding. The Trump discount is now a Trump tax. Every American 401k is shrinking because the president couldn't put down his phone at 3 a.m. And let's not forget the Japanese bond crisis. Japan signed the appalling and false letter too. The Japanese government is furious. They are the largest holder of U.S. debt. If they decide to punish Trump by selling treasuries, interest rates in the U.S. go to 10%, the housing market evaporates. The president is fighting a multi-front economic war against his own allies, and he is out of ammunition. Back in Washington, the mood has shifted from panic to conspiracy. The Make America Go Away protests outside the White House have grown louder. The crowd is energized by the global condemnation. They feel the world is on their side. But inside the Capitol building, the conversation has changed. For the first time, serious people are whispering about the 25th Amendment. Section 4 of the 25th Amendment allows the Vice President and the Cabinet to remove the President if he is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office. Is he unable? The argument is being made by constitutional scholars on every network today. Delusion. He is hallucinating deals Greenland that don't exist. Danger. He is threatening nuclear war via NATO collapse on social media at 3 a.m. incapacity. He is physically isolated in the residence, refusing to work. Compromise. He is financially compromised. Asset seizure. This isn't just Democrats talking. We are hearing that establishment Republicans, the ones who survived the purges, are terrified. They see the total wipeout poll. They see the donors fleeing. They see the world turning. It's back. They know that if Trump stays in power for another year, the Republican Party might be extinct. Removing him is the only way to save the party. Removing him is the only way to stop the bleeding. We are watching the vice president closely. J.D. Vance, or whomever is VP, has been conspicuously silent. He hasn't defended the tweet. He hasn't gone on TV. His silence is the loudest sound in Washington. Pause. He is calculating his odds. Is it better to be the Brutus who saves the Republic or the loyalist who goes down with the ship? Curious. So what is happening inside the residence right now? The leak suggests a scene straight out of a Shakespearean tragedy. The president feels betrayed by everyone. He feels betrayed by the Europeans. I paid for their defense. He feels betrayed by the donors. I gave them tax cuts. He feels betrayed by the voters. I made them great. He is surrounded by a shrinking circle of sycophants who are telling him what he wants to hear. Sir, the tweet was strong. The people love it. The Europeans are just jealous. This feedback loop of delusion is dangerous. It means he won't de-escalate. He will double down. He might actually try to pull out of NATO by executive order. He might try to seize the Federal Reserve to print money for his debts. He might try to arrest the protesters. A cornered narcissist with the nuclear codes is the most dangerous entity on the planet. And right now, Donald Trump is cornered in every possible way. Financially, politically, and psychologically, he has retreated into a mental bunker where he is the victim and the hero, and everyone outside is an enemy. Pause. While the West burns, look east. Xi Jinping is currently hosting a summit with the leaders of the Global South BRICS. He isn't tweeting insults. He is signing trade deals. He is pointing at Washington and saying, look at the chaos. Look at the disrespect. China treats you with respect. The fatal insult is the greatest propaganda victory the Chinese Communist Party has ever received. They don't have to defeat America. America is defeating itself. By alienating Europe, Trump forces Europe to trade more with China. By alienating Canada, he forces Canada to sell its oil to China. He is handing the keys of the global economy to Beijing on a silver platter. China's state media is running the vassal tweet on a loop. They are using it to prove that the U.S. is an arrogant, declining hegemon. This is how they talk about their friends. The anchors say, imagine how they will talk about you. It is devastatingly effective. Let's dig deeper into the word vassal. Trump likely picked it because it sounds powerful, but in Europe, it has a specific historical weight. It refers to feudalism. A vassal is a servant who owes military service to a lord in exchange for land. A vassal has no soul, no independence. By using this word, Trump is explicitly rejecting the concept of the sovereign nation state. He is saying that the US is the empire and everyone else is a province. This confirms the worst fears of the European intelligentsia. They have argued for years that the US is an imperial power disguised as a democracy. Trump just gave them the soundbite to prove it. This destroys 70 years of American soft power. We spent billions convincing the world that we are, quote, partners. He destroyed that investment in 30 seconds. It also alienates the European right. Even nationalist leaders like Marine Le Pen or Giorgia Meloni cannot support a US president who calls their nations vassals. Patriotism in Europe means rejecting American dominance just as much as Brussels bureaucracy. Trump alienated his own ideological allies. There is a bizarre legal angle here that hasn't been covered enough. By claiming Greenland is mine in a written statement, Trump might have created a legal liability for the US government. If the US government officially claims ownership of territory it doesn't own, it violates international law. The UN Charter, Denmark could technically sue the US in the International Court of Justice, ICJ. The US would lose. This would further delegitimize the US legal standing. It turns the US into a rogue state in the eyes of international law. It gives credence to the idea that the US ignores treaties. If the US ignores the UN Charter on Sovereignty, why should Iran follow the nuclear deal? Why should Russia leave Ukraine? Exhales sharply. Trump just dissolved the rules-based international order with one sentence. We mentioned the ACI earlier. Let's explain what it actually does. The European Union passed this law in 2023. It allows the EU to take countermeasures against any country that tries to interfere in the sovereign choices of a member state via economic pressure. Trump's tweet threatening to pull the plug if they don't pay up is the textbook definition of economic coercion. The ACI allows the EU to block US investment in Europe, exclude US companies from public procurement contracts, impose tariffs on US exports without going through the WTO, restrictions on intellectual property rights. This is a bazooka. If the EU pulls this trigger, American companies lose access to a market of 450 million rich consumers. Tesla, Amazon, Facebook, they get locked out. The US economy cannot survive a trade war with China, a blockade from Canada, and an ACI strike from Europe simultaneously. It is economic suicide. We have reached the point of no return. The fatal insult cannot be walked back. You cannot tell the King of England he is a vassal and then apologize. Sarcastic. You cannot threaten to dissolve NATO and then say, just kidding. The trust is gone. The world has moved on. They are building a post-American world right in front of our eyes. Europe is talking about a European army. Asia is talking about a Pacific trade zone without the US. The BRICS nations are laughing all the way to the bank. America is alone. And we are alone because our leader decided that insulting his friends was more important than leading them. The city on a hill has turned off the lights and locked the door. As we sign off, the situation remains fluid. We are waiting to see if the ambassadors actually leave D.C. If they do, it is the formal end of the Western alliance. We are waiting to see if the vice president breaks his silence. But one thing is certain, the era of American hegemony ended at 3:14 a.m. this morning. It didn't end with a bang. It didn't end with a war. It ended with a tweet, appalling and false. Those are the words that will be carved on the tombstone of the Trump presidency. Subscribe to the channel. We are monitoring the State Department and the Pentagon. If the 25th Amendment is invoked, we will be live instantly.